Are the Milwaukee Bucks imploding? Do we have our first big name of the year? Who would be the leader if Giannis wanted out? It's next on Locked On Jazz. Bum 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 bum.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps, including YouTube, and free daily newsletter as well at Locked On Daily. Okay, Nick Angstead, Locked On Mavericks, great host. Matt George, Locked On Kings, are beating me on newsletter signups. Empty the Noggin is out today. Sign up at lockedondaily.com. We cannot have those upstart little Sacramento small market people, and we cannot have Nick Angstead. They're going to beat us in everything else this year, so we need to at least beat them in newsletter subscriptions. So please go to Locked On Daily right now. Put your email in. It's free. It comes in your inbox. I prefer you read it. But let's go beat them in subscribers. We cannot have that. It's totally unacceptable. Cannot have Nick Angstead and Matt George, two of my favorites, two of our longtime hosts, beating us in this. So let's make sure that we get it. All right. Here's what we got planned for the show today. Will Hardy, really interesting comments about why young kids struggle to shoot and why they don't have defined shot charts. This is the hardest basketball any of the guys on the Utah Jazz have ever played in their entire life, and how they're going to deal with it is interesting. But let's start with Milwaukee, because this could get fun and exciting. And let's look at the landscape around it if it does get fun and exciting. Milwaukee lost last night. The manner in which they're losing is probably most notable. They lost 122-99 to the Memphis Grizzlies. They were down 18 with 3 minutes left in the first quarter. They were down 22 at halftime. They were down 30 in the fourth. The Milwaukee Bucks are now 1-4 on the season. They do not have Khris Middleton yet, but they did have Dame Lillard, Gary Trent Jr., Taurean Prince, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Brook Lopez, Bobby Porter. They are short one guy right now. This is basically their roster, and this is the same catastrophic disaster they had to start last year. And then they fired Adrian. We basically cost Adrian Griffin his job. And then Doc Rivers took over, and it didn't get any better. And if you go back to last year, they start the year, they're not even that bad. They're not this bad, right? We go in and hammer them when they're short guys on January 8th, I think it was, 132-116. They went to 25-12, and that was the day basically they decided they were firing their head coach. I think they were 28-12 when they fired him. They're 1-4. They were 28-12 at one point last year. They finished 49-33. They finished the year 21-21 under Doc Rivers. And then got hammered by Indiana. Giannis got hurt. Some of the numbers on Milwaukee, I don't want to be an extremist. They're 5 games in, but they look terrible. It's probably a little early, but maybe not that early. They have the softest schedule in the world. And so they should be able to rectify it. But they've lost to Chicago by 11 at home. They lost to Brooklyn by 13. They got killed by the Celtics, and they just lost to Memphis, and we're down 30. Something's not right in Milwaukee. You can start to look at it any way you want, but those are not games in which the Milwaukee Bucks should be losing. They shouldn't be losing to the Chicago Bulls. They shouldn't be losing to the Brooklyn Nets. They trailed most of the game against Chicago. So and here's the thing. They're 22nd in the league offensively. They're 24th in the league defensively. I don't know that that's actually changing. I'm certain there's some individuals on their roster that will play better, but maybe Dame wasn't the answer. Maybe trading Jrue Holiday for Dame Lillard is going to turn out to be one of the worst trades ever. You gave your rivals a championship, and Dame's not the answer. And Giannis is not flawless here. Giannis is really, really good, but Giannis is not flawless. There's a uniqueness to playing with Giannis. I mean, he's great. He plays hard, all this. He doesn't shoot, though. Dame Lillard is shooting 42% from the field and 27% from three. Gary Trent Jr. is shooting 47 and 29. Oh, second, that's Bobby Portis. Gary Trent's struggling, but Taurean Prince is on fire. They just might not have it. So what happens if they don't have it? They have 10 of their next 16 at home. If they don't rectify this like right away, it's a disaster. So we're early on this. So who has the package to go to Milwaukee? This is what's really interesting. This is really the question. What team out there can put together the best package at this point to go get a player? So from the Jazz standpoint, if you're making this deal, this is exactly why you're re-signing Lowry. You can't sign Lowry. You'd try to end up with Giannis and Lowry. You're going to put together a bunch of contracts to equal the Milwaukee Bucks and Giannis, but you're not going to be able to give them assets other than draft picks. We would have to literally probably unload all of our draft picks, most of Cleveland's and most of Minnesota's. We could put together I think he's a $48 million player. We could put together the $48 million. John Collins is at 26, Colin Sexton's at 18. They're irrelevant. We don't have a player that Milwaukee would look at and say, okay, that's a future piece for us to develop. With Taylor Hendricks out, this has kind of been the point all week. This is where it really sets us back. But Keontae's not there. Cody Williams not there. Isaiah Collier's not there. None of those guys. Milwaukee's not going to look at us and say we want any of those guys. You can put the numbers together and get to 40. It's Clarkson, Sexton, Collins. You just put it together and figure it out. But picks, we would be able to hand them our 2025 pick, which might be great, our 2027, our 2029, we'd wrap, and our 30-31, 4 picks probably. Can't go back-to-back years. And in the meantime, our Laker pick is probably our single most valuable pick. That's 2027, 0 through 4 protected. And you have Cleveland and Minnesota's picks this year, Cleveland and Minnesota's picks in 2027, Cleveland and Minnesota's picks in 2029. Cobble together some 7 first-round draft picks for Giannis Antetokounmpo. It's probably like something crazy like that what it takes. I'm making this up. I don't have any idea. But it's probably in that range of what it would take. And then you got to figure out whether you're going to be able to re-sign Giannis at the end of it if you're going to make this kind of deal. That's a different conversation entirely. So who else is out there? Giannis, by the way, is signed for 2025 and 2025, 26, and 26, 27. So 2 more years after this, then he has a player option for 27, 28. So you get him for this season and 2 more if someone goes and gets him. San Antonio is the most interesting one. They probably are the leaders in the clubhouse of the package they can put together. Because they have some young players that might be interesting. Devin Vassell, who signed for 5 years at about $27 million a year. He might be interesting. Other than that, I don't know that Stephen Castle's that interesting yet, but maybe somebody likes him and wants him. And then they can go play the draft game as well. And they've got a bunch of different picks, most of which are kind of protected. So they have they have their own, and then they have Atlanta's 2025, and which is probably going to be really good. And they have a pick swap with Atlanta 2026. That's probably better. And Atlanta's 2027. That's better than anything the Jazz have in their pocket. The Spurs own picks in 2025, 2027, or they have all of them, 2026. I don't think they can trade 28 because it's pick swap with Boston. I don't know who, though it's actually, they have Boston's pick because of the Derek White trade. So they probably could. And then they have some pick swaps with Sacramento and the pick swap with Dallas and Minnesota late in 2030. So they have their picks, and then they have these Atlanta packages, which are probably the best ones out there. The other one that gets interesting is OKC, but OKC might be so good right now that they're not willing to actually unload that package for Giannis. It might actually, crazy enough, it might not be the right move for them. Atlanta doesn't have any picks, anything to get done because they don't have their own picks. Boston's obviously not going to do it. Charlotte probably doesn't have a package they can put together. They don't have enough back picks to kind of compete with Utah and San Antonio in this game. The Houston Rockets would be the other team that probably has the best package they could put together because you could decide that you might like some of their young pieces. They're Jalen Green, the Jabari Smith, the Amon Thompson, something of that sort. And Fred VanVleet at $42 million suddenly makes it a very easy trade for them to make. And Houston has Phoenix's pick in 2025. They have some pick swaps with Brooklyn, which are interesting in 2027. And they have a Suns pick, I think, in 2029. So of the teams, just quickly, if Giannis were to become available, Utah's is entirely picks. San Antonio has a player in Devin Vassell and probably the best picks available in Atlanta's picks. Houston has the best young players available, but not as good a picks as what Utah or San Antonio would have to offer on that. And then obviously there's some other teams with Giannis involved. They'll just try to put together whatever package. I mean, for all you know, New Orleans would trade Zion, right? I mean, the amount of players that teams would suddenly be willing to move might be pretty astronomical. Denver might be able to blow the whole thing up, keeping Jokic and trying to figure it out. Orlando might be willing to do Franz Wagner for Giannis. Then things really change quite a bit. But it's interesting. Keep an eye on Milwaukee. 10 of their next 16 at home. We're going to be a part of it. This is go time for them or not. The Utah Jazz basketball players are on the verge of the hardest basketball they've ever had to play in their entire life. And how they deal with it's going to be wildly interesting. It's next on Locked On Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. The Hyundai lineup of cars, absolutely fabulous. I'm driving the Palisade right now. Absolutely love it. Couldn't be more pleased with what I've experienced. We've bought 2 Santa Fe's, and the Ioniq is the electric car that I absolutely adore as well. So I'm speaking from experience that we've gone down the Hyundai road and been really pleased. Why? Because when I did the research, it got me the best dollar value. It got me the best safety features, and I like the way it looked. So if you're interested right now and looking for a car, put Hyundai on the list, and then you can decide. But let's get you the VIP meeting over at Murdoch Hyundai at 4646 South State Street, or in Logan or in Linden. Email me first at dlock09@gmail.com so that we can get you that VIP meeting over at Murdoch Hyundai. Walk in, be taken care of right away. Get what a Locked On every day deserves. Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. Jazz moved from favorite to underdog yesterday when Lowry was out on FanDuel. Get to tackle the NFL, the NBA with America's #1 sports book right now. And because right now, new customers get $5 new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. That'll get you started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more. It's with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL, as well as Locked On. David Locke along with you. Thank you so much for being everydayer. Thank you so much for being locked on. Guys who stopped by the booth and we've gotten stickers. It's been great. I got one guy yesterday stopped by, gave me a whole critique of the new Locked On NBA shows. Hope you like them. Game night after every game, running through all the action. And then the Doug Branson, Matt Moore. Matt Moore's incredible. And Hayes there for you on the midday. All right. A few poll questions I threw out to you. Which player do you think will step up in Taylor Hendricks' absence? This was on our YouTube community page. 56% said Kyle Filipowski. 31% said Cody Williams. 7% Bryce Sensabaugh. 6% said Keyonte George. Another question we asked was, which young player do you think will make the biggest impact for the Jazz this season? still holding that one at 42%. Kyle Filipowski at 29 and Cody Williams at 27. Bryce Sensabaugh has not gotten a lot of votes there. And on the Kyle Filipowski performance the other day, very impressed. He's showing great potential, 59% doing well, 27% not convinced yet, 14% for the cynics that are out there so far. So those are the quick poll question results. All right. What the Utah Jazz are embarking upon right now offensively is pretty incredible. They are really, really struggling. But let's go back to our preseason shows where we talk about 240 minutes. And if you have 240 minutes on the roster, that's 5 guys at 48 minutes a night, and you have an established roster and you play through it. And so I think we had the Jazz at about 161 minutes, and that based Keyonte on 30. Well, if we're being honest about Keyonte right now, his shooting is at the point where I don't think you can call him an NBA rotation player right now. He's going to continue to be an NBA rotation player, but he is not. An NBA rotation player does not shoot 28% from the field and 20% from 3. And so he is not, he looks the part and acts the part and holds himself there and understands what's going on. But as of right now, if you had to be totally honest, you would not count him as an NBA rotation player. So you take him off the list and you take Lauri Markkanen off the list, and we're below 100 minutes of an established NBA rotation players on the floor at one time right now, which is making the game wildly difficult for everyone. Like, there is just some level in this game, particularly when you have an opponent who's competing with you, that you need to be able to have other guys on the floor that can make plays and do things and help you out. And right now, like, Cody's not an NBA rotation player yet. We're trying to let him have it, but it's a lot for him right now. And Filipowski actually looks more solid than some of the other guys. Walker certainly is. Jordan is. Colin is. John is. Lowry, but Lowry didn't play last night. And so we're really pushing guys beyond where they are, and it's becoming, and it's clear, like, John Collins is shooting 42% from the field and 29% from 3. This guy finished last year in the second half of the season when the roster was a little limited. I mean, he was killing it at the end of last year. Let me pull up his post All-Star break numbers. I think he was shooting 50% from 3 or about 45% from 3. John Collins in post All-Star break last year, there it goes, was 18 points, 9 rebounds, 56% from the field, and 49% from 3. That's the offensive player John Collins is. And right now he's shooting 42% and 29% from 3. It's that hard. Jordan Clarkson, who last year had a struggle at 41% and 29% from 3, is shooting 39% from the field and 19% from 3. Like, this is not a 19% three-point shooter. Like, he is just scuffling. It is hard to come by shots. It is hard to get what he wants right now. It is hard. His layups and dunk percentage is only at 13%. He cannot get to the rim. There's no room for him right now. So it is really tough on these guys right now. Bryce Sensabaugh suddenly holding his own a little bit with select shots at 46% and 43%. Cody Williams is shooting 21% and 17% from 3. It's a lot for him right now. And obviously, Key is the headliner, starting with his 5 of 18 night that just now has put the spotlight on him at 28% and 20% from 3. We're struggling offensively. And it's fairly historic, frankly. I put it in Empty the Noggin today, which is available for you on the newsletter, kind of historically where the Jazz are offensively for 5 games in the year. I actually was surprised how many teams had actually been below a point of possession in their opening 5 games of NBA season. I was actually surprised how common that was. But that's in the newsletter today at Locked On Jazz. Go to Locked On Daily. So what I think is fascinating here is this is hard. Like, going to the gym right now is hard for these guys. It's fun, everything. Like, they're not probably rolling into the gym feeling like they have a ton of chance for success and that they're going to have a great night. There's probably a little dread right now. And how do they get their rhythm, and how do they get their opportunities, and where do they get their stuff, and how do they get free, and where do they find space? And it's going to be interesting because I think a lot of the guys I'm talking about right now are Jordan Clarkson, John Collins, and Colin Sexton. Like, I think and Lauri Markkanen, frankly, when he's back, because I think, Colin's shooting 46% from the field and 20% from 3. I mean, we just don't have anybody who's on their game right now, and it truly is because this is the hardest basketball they've had to play in their lives. The floor is crowded. There just aren't a lot of support. No one's bailing them out. They don't have the guy right now who they don't go into the game and know that, like, Paulo Banchero, I know he got hurt last night, but Paulo Banchero's given them 25 and relieving that burden. That's just not in their list of things that they have as somebody who's going to help them out. And so how do they deal? Do they get more and more frustrated? Do they roll over and die? Do they fight through it? Do the veterans show leadership to the youngsters to show how does Key, who's like, this goes on for another 4 or 5 games with Key, and like he's like in the balance at that point. Like the pressure is just not going away right now on these guys. It is going the other direction. Getting on the road might be good. Just get away, go play, get in the rhythm of the road. Though it's a weird road trip because we're sitting in Chicago for like 3 days. But it's going to be really, really fascinating to see what we see. And the one where I see it most obviously is the opening of the third quarters. Last night, the opening of the third quarter was brutal. And so was the Golden State opening of the third quarter. And I don't know if that's a lack of focus, maturity, the other team amps it up, we don't have an answer, or if it's hard. And so you start the third quarter when it's hard and you're like, oh, dear God. But right, Cody Williams dribbles it off his foot. Keyonte turns it over on a bad pass. Clarkson misses a 13-footer. Keyonte throws another one away. Filipowski actually gets a layup off a Kessler block. Cody tries to step back in the middle lane, misses. Key misses a 27-footer. Key throws another one away. Kessler misses a layup over Wemby. And our 8-point lead is gone. And it's just a miserable start. We come out of the timeout. Key loses another one, a 6 turnover the game. Clarkson misses a 3, which was with 14 on the shot clock and questionable shot. I don't know what a questionable, but actually I'll take that back. I don't know what a questionable shot is because I don't know where all our shots are coming from without Lowry. And so someone like Jordan's got to squeeze him off every now and then. So I'm not sure I'm going to say that's a questionable shot. Cody Williams gets an open look, misses it. Key turns one over again. Filipowski hits a 3, but by this time we're down 8. It's over. Just got away from us that fast. Just in a brutal sequence in the third quarter, but it's hard right now. So this is the hardest basketball these guys have ever played in their whole lives. And it's going to be really interesting to see really Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson, John Collins, Lowry Mark, and how they fight through it. And then on another level, Key's playing for his career. So it'll be fascinating. It's kind of what the season's all about. How do you deal with these things? How do you deal with toughness? What do you got? All right, I asked Will Hardy about young kids' shot distribution and why it's, literally my question was like, why it's like, wee, and he started laughing. It's all over the place. And he had a really interesting answer to why that is, and I'll have that for you next as we continue here on Locked on Jazz. Thanks so much for tuning in to Locked on Jazz. Today's edition is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. All right, Game Time is the official ticketing app of Locked On. And why? Because do we love Game Time so much? Well, it does everything for you from the super deal. And the super deal lets you kind of customize your spots and what you're looking for, and it sorts through the thousands of tickets that might be available to find you the right ticket for you based on your past performances. Curated deals make it easier for you to get your best price, saves you a bunch of time. Second thing, saves you a bunch of time, so you don't have to worry about whether other ticketing apps have better prices because they give you the low price guarantee. We'll credit you 110% of the difference. They give you seat view, get a panoramic view from your seat so you know exactly what you're buying. Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered by flexible customer service policy, the most flexible customer service policy in the ticket industry. And then, of course, all-in pricing, so we have no surprises. Toggle that feature on. You're there. You're good. Game Time picks. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater, and save you time as well. So download the Game Time app now. Create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? Yeah, you know, it's game time. Thanks so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen. Thanks so much for signing up for the daily newsletter so that we can catch Nick and Matt and not be falling behind. We cannot have that. Go to Locked on Daily right now and sign up. Other questions that came down the line on our community tabs today. It's interesting. I thought, How did you feel about Will Hardy's decision to have the team watch the entire game fill after the Warriors lost? A smart move to address issues head on, 60%. A good learning opportunity is 25%. Not sure, need to see results in future games, 11%. Unnecessary and could demoralize the team. No one thought that. I loved it. Good answers, everybody. All right. So, first of all, this rookie class in the NBA is a disaster right now. And it is the worst rookie class ever. There is literally almost nobody like doing much of anything of value right now. No, Bub Carrington in Washington is averaging 11 points a game while shooting 44% from the field and 30% from three. He is like the leader in the clubhouse to win Rookie of the Year. Jalen Wells, who's at a Washington State second-round pick from Memphis, is averaging 9 points a day, and Ryan Dunn's averaging 9. And Risha Shea, the number one pick, is shooting 35% from the field and 24% from three. It is ugly. And so Alex Sarr is shooting 29% and 24%. He was the number 2 pick. Stephen Castle has hit 2 shots outside of the rim. He is shooting 30% from the field and 10% from three. Ron Holland is shooting 46% and 11% from three. It is ugly. So Cody Williams is shooting 21% and 17% from three. Reed Shepherd is supposed to be the best shooter in the draft, 38% and 33%. So, and you look at their shot charts, even second-year players, they're just everywhere. So I asked Will about this yesterday. Really interesting. Will said, some of this is based on the coaches. That we're trying to find out what all these players can do and where they can make plays and how they can make plays. And so rather than narrowing them to set plays, we're kind of having them run around all over the place everywhere trying to make plays. And that widens out their shot distribution and their shot charts. And so then they don't end up with spots. Whereas if you watch Khris Middleton in Milwaukee, or one of those kind of players, been around forever, they just get to their spot and make a shot. But that's also because the play call is solely based to get them to their spot. Like by the time you have that player as a coach, you know exactly what you have, who you have. And so you're actually making play calls to match that. Whereas a young player, such as any of our young players, Keyonte or, Taylor when he was playing, or anything, you're not making any calls for them in that sense. And so they are kind of willy-nilly all over the map trying to find their spots and where they are and how they're going to get their shots. And the coaches are trying to find it themselves to figure out where they're at their best. I had not thought of it from that perspective before. I thought that was a really interesting angle from Will last night, that the coaches are actually maybe partially responsible for the young players' kind of inability to have consistency and looks and things of that nature in their game. So worth just kind of remembering and keeping an eye on that. Part of this evolution that we're watching our young players go through is also the coaches beginning to understand how to use them and maximize their skill set. And we probably don't know that entirely up to that moment. So kind of an interesting thing. We'll get back to some of our third segment topics. We used to do kind of hottest teams in the league and those kind of things. And there's obviously a lot of around the league stuff right now. One interesting thing I would share with you is I was talking to Sean Elliott last night from the Spurs broadcast team. He said that he thinks Oklahoma City is the best defensive team he's seen in like 20 years in the league. The numbers back that up too, by the way. They are allowing about 88 points per 100 possessions right now in just kind of an unbelievable they're at 92.5 points per 100 possessions. The next closest is the Warriors at 97.9. Kind of a wow there for a second. Oklahoma City's offense is not very good, but their defense is so incredible right now that they are crushing people. So keep an eye on that. Cleveland, by the way, has some unnatural stuff going on right now. They're shooting 61% effective field goal percentage. They're just way out of their head shooting. So that will come back when you look at kind of quantified shot quality and some of those things. Cleveland's just in a different place than's reasonable, but they are the number 2 offense and number 3 defense in the opening week. That's why they're 5-0. So we'll see what happens with that. But their defense is good. Evan Mobley's playing well and Jared Allen. So some of that's probably really real on the defensive end under Kenny Atkinson. But their offensive stuff is a little just kind of little notes that I have found along the way. And then the last one, Mike Schreier, who writes for the Locked On newsletter. So the newsletter, by the way, has a Jazz story and it has a national story written by Katie Hendel 4 days a week and Mike Schreier, who's brilliant. Both of them are great. On the other days or on Thursday, and he wrote about the rise in offensive rebounding yesterday, which was really interesting. So offensive rebounding rate is higher than it's ever been at any point in NBA history right now. And it is kind of universal across the board that everyone is crashing and going after the offensive rebounds. So he had the average offensive rebounding rate sits at 29%. So it's the highest 10-day sample in the last decade by a mile, he wrote. And, Popovich and Doc Rivers and them killed offensive rebounding for a while, and now it's back. He also pointed out that last year's best regular season teams emphasized it. New York, Denver, Phoenix, and Boston were all top 11 offensive rebounding teams. So there's this kind of rise in offensive rebounding. Will Hardy's been talking a little bit about how defensive rebounding is a constant for teams that actually win all the time. But right now, the offensive rebounding rate, it is 29%. It has been kind of hovering at 27, 26% over the years. So it is a wild number. The other one is that 3-point shots is back up after dropping for a little bit. And so that leads to a more rebounds, long rebounds. And we saw that last night. There were a ton of them. He had another interesting note this is why you should subscribe, by the way. The NBA box out numbers are notoriously low. The average team is logging nearly 30% fewer defensive box out this year than last, and 19% fewer than 2022-23. So kind of an interesting little note there for you on that. All right, so that's all from the Locked On podcast, by the way, or on the Locked On newsletter. So go subscribe and go beat Matt and Nick. That was the point of today's show. We're going to win something this year, baby. All right, have a wonderful weekend. Empty the noggin. We'll be back with you on Monday on the newsletter. I'll be back with you postcast with Ron on Saturday. We'll do Ask LOJ next Friday. You guys are awesome. I love the fact you're sticking with us. I love the fact we're doing the season together. There are not going to be a lot of W's. It is ugly. It is hard for us to score right now. It is tough at times, but I love the fact that you're still with us. So thank you very much for subscribing to the show. Thank you for being a part of it. I greatly appreciate you. This is Locked On Jazz. Starting Monday, we'll have a 24/7 national NBA channel. Woohoo! Right now, though, I'll send you to Locked On Sports Today and check out Locked On NBA on audio.